Hello, believers. Welcome again to a topic relating to the Holy Spirit and His work in our lives. My topic today is fleshly methods don't produce godly results. How many times have we used fleshly methods and think that we're going to get God's will? It's happening every day, it happens over and over again. But I'm here to tell you today you will never ever get God's results using fleshly methods. I want to talk about three methods we use that cause us not to produce God's will. One, we get out of His will. We ask Him to do something, or we do something that is totally against the will of God for our lives. See, God has a purpose, He has a plan, He has a destiny for all of His children. He said, you have been bought with a price. You don't belong to yourself anymore. And He said everything we are to do as believers is supposed to be according to the will of God. But how many times do we go about trying to get God to do things that are not in His will? And often we know it's not His will because we've gone to Him, we prayed about it, and He has said no. And sometimes we think, well, if I go on a fast, if I plead with God, if I cry long enough, then maybe He'll change His mind. God said, I'm not going to do it. He said, because what I have planned for you is so great. If I include your will in there, He said, it's going to mess up everything. And how many times have we delayed God's will in our lives because we wanted our will? We wanted it our way. We thought we knew what was best. And even sometimes we would get upset with God when He didn't do it our way. But God said, you'll never, ever get a godly result being outside of my will. It's just not going to happen. Another reason why we don't get a godly result moving in our flesh, because we are out of God's timing. Now, this is a big one. How many times have we moved outside of God's timing? There was a woman who told me a story. She said that she had met a man and she really wanted to marry this man. But she said, I went to the Lord and I prayed. And the Lord said to her, wait 1 year. But she didn't do it. She married him within a few months. And she said, I know I heard what God said, but I wanted to marry right then. And 18 years later, she is still suffering because of that decision. Because this man was not totally committed to the Lord. And to this day, he's still not committed. See, God already knew. He might have had her to pray for 1 year before marrying him so that they could be on one accord, so that they could be equally yoked. But she couldn't wait. She wanted it in her timing. And she said, I've thought about that over and over again, how I got outside of God's will when I know I heard Him say, wait 1 year. How many times has God given us instructions and told us specifically what He wanted us to do? And even sometimes God said, no. He said, I don't want you to marry that person at all. That is not my choice for you. But then we go ahead and do it anyway. Well, you're never going to get a godly result. And then once the person gets into that relationship, it is tumultuous. They go through many changes. There was one other woman, I'll tell you about her. She met this man in the church. And she said she knew this was the person that she was supposed to have. But the Holy Spirit told her, don't marry him. Other people saw it. They said, he's not right for you. But she said he treated her like a queen. He brought her flowers and he treated her so well. And because she had been in a previous relationship where she was mistreated. So she said she was head over heels for this man because he was such a gentleman. He was so kind to her. He would take her out to dinner and just do nice things for her. But guess what? She married him. And she said somebody else showed up after she married him. This man, she said he abused her. He abused her mentally. He abused her physically. He abused her emotionally because the enemy had set her up. Now, he couldn't have set her up if she had listened to the Lord because the Lord had already told her, don't marry him. But she just couldn't believe, how could I not marry this man that's so good and so kind to me and so loving? Because she was desperate for a love of another person, which is not a bad thing. But God said, this is not the one. So she went ahead and did it her way. And as a result of that, she didn't wait on God. And she paid a high price for it. She ended up divorcing. She went into deep depression for over a year because it devastated her so much. She just couldn't believe that one person could be that kind in dating and be such a mean and evil and a hateful to her after marrying her. So it really impacted her. And of course, that affected her in her work for the Lord because now she had to recover mentally, emotionally. And she couldn't get much kingdom work done because she had to heal. So you see, getting out of God's timing is not going to give you a godly result. And we do it over and over and over again. But I come today to tell you, we can avoid these kind of scenarios if we ask the Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us in everything we do. There is so much pain and heartache that we go through because we do not use the helper that Jesus provided for us. When I look back over my life and years with the Lord, how many times could I have avoided the things that I did if I was being led by the Holy Spirit in every decision? If I was being led by the Holy Spirit in whatever I did, I could have avoided a lot of heartache in my life. But I didn't know any better. No one told me that I could depend on the Holy Spirit and I could ask the Holy Spirit every question that I had and that I could depend on him according to what Jesus said. I knew about the Holy Spirit. I was filled with the Holy Spirit. But for some reason, somebody forgot to tell me that the Holy Spirit can lead you and guide you on a daily basis in every decision you make. And if we would follow the leading of his Spirit, we would avoid the pitfalls of the enemy. Because his goal is to always get us out of God's will. His goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. It's unnecessary. All we have to do is ask the Holy Spirit to guide us. I talk to so many believers. And they say, I prayed about it. I said, but did you ask the Holy Spirit? And they said, well, I did. I prayed about it. I said, that's not the same thing as asking the Holy Spirit. Jesus didn't say, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, but you just pray to God about it. He said, no, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit as a helper. Well, if someone's going to help you, then you have to ask them what it is you should be doing. In Galatians, he said, if we're led by the Spirit, we won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. If the Holy Spirit is guiding us. But how many believers are not being guided by the Holy Spirit? But yet they're trying to get godly results through their fleshly methods. Some of them are even using the world's methods. They look at talk shows and different things to get answers to their situations. But as believers, we have the ultimate person living on the inside of us, the Holy Spirit. And he can guide us in any situation. I'm just so amazed how We do not utilize this superpower living in us. And so, therefore, we get out of God's will over and over and over again. And even are surprised when we hit some of these stumbling blocks. But the answer is asking the Holy Spirit to guide you. I keep telling people wherever I go, because I lived for years in the church, very active in the church, but I live a defeated life. When life came up and situations came up, I used the fleshly methods to try to get a godly result. I would listen to other people. I would watch what other people did and how they did it. I would go to people that didn't even know anything about walking in the Spirit and try to get their opinions and implement them. Or I wanted things my way. That was the biggest thing for me. I wanted to bring my request to God, and I just needed God to listen to what I needed. And then, God, would you take care of that, please? God said, no, you don't dictate to me. You don't tell me what to do. I'm to tell you what to do. And how does he do that? Through his Spirit. We should be asking him, God, what is your will in this situation, in every situation? God, what is your will? But too often, we want to tell God to do what we want him to do and think we're going to get a godly result. God says, you're on your own with that one. He said, but where I guide, I provide. Now you say, Pastor Joyce, does that mean that if you're walking in the Spirit, that you're not going to have obstacles and things come up? Absolutely, you will. Because the enemy is going to try to distract you from what is the will of God. But this is the beauty. When you are following the will of God and the Holy Spirit, whatever obstacles the enemy throws in your way, you will be able to go around them, defeat them, and not be moved by them. You will have victory after victory after victory. That doesn't mean that there won't be fights, because he said our fight is not against flesh and blood, but principalities and wickedness in high places. How are you going to fight principalities and wickedness in high places with the flesh? You can't do it because you can't see them, number one. But the Holy Spirit said, I can see them. I know what they're doing. And I will give you a strategy in how to get God's results. I'm telling you today, don't try to get a spiritual result with a fleshly method. It won't work. And sometimes the enemy will make you think it looks like it's working. I've been in those situations. I take it up on myself, and God didn't move when I wanted him to move. I would put some things in place. It lasts for a minute, but eventually it would crumble. It would fizzle. It would go away. It didn't last because it was never God's will for my life. And I'm talking good things. I'm talking about things that I was trying to do for the kingdom. But I wasn't seeking God's will. I wasn't seeking God's time. Because sometimes we're trying to do things as it relates to ministry. God said, but I need to do some more work on you. You're trying to help other people, and I haven't finished working on you. Because he showed me, he said, Joyce, there are some things I have to prune you. There's some ways and attitudes that I have to get rid of for you to do the ultimate in what I want you to do. That doesn't mean you can't do some things. He said, but you should be seeking me about what is the time to do? Is this the timing for this? I don't care if it's writing a book, if it's starting a ministry. How many times do people start ministries and they don't wait on God? They don't seek the Holy Spirit. And they mess up their life and other people's lives, or they're not effective because they are not seeking the will of God. They're moving in their flesh and don't even realize it. They think that God is pleased, and it just, well, look, God, what I'm doing for you. I remember God had told me one time, he said, Joyce, you can give your body to be burned. But I didn't tell you to do that. He said, you burned up for nothing. You would burn for absolutely nothing. He said, I only want you to do what I tell you to do. Because when you follow my will, then whatever you do is going to be a blessing not only to you, but it's going to be a blessing to others. But we don't follow the leading of the Holy Spirit as we should. Well, I encourage you today. Whatever you do, whatever decision you make, be it a situation about a relationship, about finances, about school, whatever you're making decisions about as a pastor, start with the Holy Spirit and ask Him, Holy Spirit, what should I do? Holy Spirit, how should I handle this situation? I pastored a church with my husband for a while. And when I look back on the decisions that I made and some of the things I did, I shiver because I was trying to pastor like I saw other people pastor, or I was moving in my flesh, making decisions over people's lives and not consulting the Holy Spirit. How many pastors are trying to make decisions about their congregants, but they're not asking the Holy Spirit? And they've got all kind of confusion in the church because they're not handling the situations that are going to occur, because the church is a hospital. So you expect problems to be there. But if you don't handle them according to the Spirit, then that's when confusion comes in. That's when there's infighting and there's cliques and all kinds of stuff going on. I would share with my pastor, fellow pastors today, start asking the Holy Spirit. When you have a problem in your church, when you have a problem with a member in your church that's creating havoc, ask the Holy Spirit how to handle it. Don't handle it the way you think it ought to be handled. Because if you ask the Holy Spirit, He's going to give you the right answer every time. Because even as pastors, we have to be careful. We can get in our flesh. We can get angry. We can get frustrated. We can become bitter with the people that we are pastoring. But the Holy Spirit, if you're listening to Him, He will show you. Even if you have gotten over to bitterness and anger with one of your members, He's going to say, you need to deal with that. Because you cannot pastor someone if you're angry and bitter. You got to know what God's will is. So again, today, I leave you with that thought. You cannot get a godly result with a fleshly method. It's never going to work. Till next time, God bless.